Here are the 5 principles for clean code that every software engineer must understand. Starting with principle number 1, meaningful names. Choosing descriptive and unambiguous names for variables, functions, and classes is the best practice to avoid confusion and make the code more readable. Let's look at the following code, which is supposed to read the salaries of the company employees and calculate the monthly salary for each employee. As you can see, this code is hard to read, and moreover, it's really hard to maintain and extend because you don't understand what these symbols and shortcuts are. So let's go through the code line by line. So we have here the input file path and the output file path. Those lines are fine because they are really expressive and you understand what they are doing. So let's go next. The const employees equal read ed, and it takes the input file path that we have provided here. Obviously there is something wrong here because read ed is not readable and it's not expressive and it doesn't actually express what all these lines are doing. So in order to fix this, we have to make it more readable. So read ed means read employee data. So I know it because I know the context of the code. If you don't know it previously, then you had to actually go into the function and try to read and go through the function line by line and understand what it's doing, and then you modify the variable name or the function name of your function. So in order to achieve that, we have to actually modify it. So we select the function here and we give it a meaningful name. So read employee data. And now if we go back to the main code, then now it's const employees equal read employee data, and it takes the input file path, which makes sense. And now it's readable. And now let's explore the next lines. So this if condition is fine and it's really readable. So the next line is employee with salary equal CMS employees. This line is not readable at all because CMS doesn't express anything. So as we actually fixed line 37, which is read employee data, we have to do the same thing for line 43 and also for line 44 because write m data is not expressive at all. So employee with salary, assuming that I don't have any context about it, then I have to go into CMS and see what is doing, and then from the context that I understand, I can rename the function. So basically let's go from line 15. So it maps employees to this object, which is monthly salary and the rest of the employee. But before that, it calculates the employee monthly salary and it takes hourly rate and multiplies it to hours worked per employee. And then it calculates a monthly salary for every employee. So basically, this function is calculating the monthly salary. So let's rename it. Will be calculate monthly salary. And now it became readable and expressive. And we are doing the same thing for the rest of the code here. So write m data will be write employee data, which now is very obvious. Honestly, the rest of this code is really fine. The variable's name is really a good practice here, that you have always follow these when you write code. So what I mean is that this is a really nice variable name, input file path, output file path, and also employees. Those variables are really expressive and makes it really easy for the reader of the code to actually read and go smoothly and understand the context about the code. And finally, it will be easy to maintain and extend. So the only thing that you can actually modify in this code is in read employee data. So you have const data equal, and then you read the file that you provided in the input here. Data is not expressive, but actually it's not actually mandatory to modify this data variable because anyway you understand it from the context here. But actually, to make it more readable, then you can actually modify this data to be employee data. and of course we change this here. Now it's more readable, so we know right now that this is the employee data that we actually read from the file, and we provide that input to be parsed, and then we have a list of employees as JSON, and then we return that JSON. So now it's more readable, and actually we can apply this also for the write employee data as well, because we write employee data as we read employee data as well. So principle number 2, functions should do one thing, which implies the single responsibility principle in software engineering. As you can see, this function is not limited to a single task. Instead, it performs multiple responsibilities. Number 1, it validates the user data. Number 2, it registers the user by saving their information to the database. Number 3, it sends a welcome email to the newly registered user. If any of these parts fails or needs to change, you risk breaking the entire function. It makes testing and debugging and maintaining the code harder, all classic signs of single responsibility violations. So the best fix is to break the function into smaller, focused functions where each one has a single responsibility. This follows the single responsibility principle and makes your code cleaner, more reusable, and more easier to maintain or test. So let's see how to do it. So this function needs to actually break it into 3 functions as we said before. So the first function will be validate user, and here it takes user data. And as you see, so we can actually check if the user data is valid here. And then we remove this and replace it with the validate user function, and we give it user data. And the same thing we do for this method as well. So we take these lines and we have function here, and we save user to the database, and we actually paste these lines here, and we invoke. So we invoke this function save user in here, and we give the user data to it. And number 3 is to create the send email function. So send email function will basically send email to the user. So send the email to the user, and we take the following and we pass it to here, and we send that email in the send email. And here we invoke send email with the content and the user email as well. Now, as you see, we broke this function into 3 smaller functions. Now you can create unit tests for validate user and for save user and for send email to user as well. And you have the entire workflow coded in register user and send welcome email function. So now you applied the single responsibility principle in a good way. Principle number 3, avoid code duplication. If we look at the following code, we have 2 functions. The first one, send welcome email, and the second one, send password reset email. Obviously, we are here sending emails. The first one is a welcome email, and the second one is to reset the password using the email of the user. As you can see, there is a duplication, which means that we are using the same snippet of code in each of these functions. So we actually have here email options, and we use the transporter, which uses the node mailer library, and we send in email using it. So these are duplications. This is exactly violating the clean code concept. So let's fix this. So in order to fix this, we have to take the common parts out of the function. As we see, the transporter is a common part among these 2 functions. So we take it outside, remove it from here, and now we need to parameterize the mail options, because we are going to receive it from send welcome email and send password reset email. So here we need to have the user, and also we need to have from and to, and subject, and also text. From there we can replace this with this, and then we can use the following here. We save this outside, and we can replace the following with subject and with text as well. And now we have the mail option. So in order to fix this, we need to first create a function called send email, which will be common between these two functions. So this function will take to and subject and the text, and it will invoke the following code. So it will invoke to and the subject, and also here's the text as well. So now this function sends an email. So we remove this code and we invoke send email with the parameters that we need from the welcome email. And we remove the mail options here because we are sending it with the send email now. And also the same thing for the password. We remove this one and we invoke send email with all the parameters that we have for the password reset email. And now we remove the duplication. So one improvement that we can do for each function that we extract these options in a variable. So we can actually extract the subject and also the text, and we replace this, and also we replace this as well. And we apply the same thing for send password reset email. So the subject, we reset your password, and here this is a message for resetting the password. And now, as you can see, we have actually removed the duplication. We have just one function that sends an email, and we reuse that function in the send welcome email and send password reset email. And if at some point we reset or send any email notification or any function that sends an email for the user, like advertisement or anything, then we can reuse the same function. And we can create tests for this function as well. It will be easy. If there is any bug that happens in sending email, we know that this function is actually the main point that actually sends the email. Then it will make the debugging easier and easier. The fourth principle is avoiding unnecessary levels of nesting. So let's look at this code. It basically finds the active user among all the users in the system. So let's start why this code is really bad. So we have three reasons for this. So the first reason is too many F blocks and nesting levels, which makes it hard to scan and understand quickly. This is number two. And number three is repetitive return path, which makes the code very hard to follow. So let's see how can we fix this kind of stuff. So if we try to actually divide the code into smaller pieces, so we have the parent f, which checks if the user exists and the user.length more than 0. Otherwise, it returns null. So let's play on this first. So number one, we have to actually play on the negative condition here. So we can check if the users is not an array, or if the users dot length equals 0, then we return null. And now we got rid of the negative condition here and also this condition. So we have simplified it, and now we don't have nesting for the upper level. So what can we do for this level? First of all, we can actually change this loop, more simpler loop here, which is user of users. Makes it more readable and easier. And we replace users of I with user. Okay, now let's work on the if condition itself. So what can we do here? We can actually leave this condition as it is, but we can enhance the nested if condition. We can actually use a ternary operator here. Do user dot user is active, then return user, otherwise return null. And now we get rid of this nesting condition. Now look at the code. It's more readable and really nice. So principle number 5, write tests and keep code testable, which is about writing code in a way that it's easy to isolate and test. Poor testability often comes with tight coupling, global state, or non-deterministic behavior. So this code violates this principle because of 3 reasons. Reason number 1, tight coupling, directly calls database and email service. Reason number 2, no dependency injection. You can't mock or stop the DB or email service easily. Reason number 3, side effects. It reads from and writes to external systems. So non-deterministic behavior because it reads from an external system. So in order to fix this function, we need to first dependency inject all the dependencies that we are calling here, like the DB and email service. So in order to do that, we can actually mock here, we can actually inject the functions that we are calling. So the first function is a get user and also send email. So now we can get rid of these dependencies right now, the DB and the email service. And here we can right away call the get user. And now this function doesn't know how to call this user. Is it from the database or from file or whatever? So it just uses a dependency that's being sent in the parameter. And now we actually remove these as well, and we call send email. And now we can actually remove email service.send and replace it with send email. Now the function is testable. So let's try to actually see how the test look like after we modify this function like this. So the test will be something like this: sends a welcome email to the correct user. So now we can mock the user, and also we can mock the get user and the send email. So we don't have to actually send an email or get the user from the database, because this is a unit test and we don't need to actually head the database or send an email every time we run the test. So now we have mocked it, and we call the actual function and we send an arbitrary user ID here, and we send the mocked get user and the mocked send email. If we haven't actually provided these dependencies in the send welcome email, the modified versions that we have implemented earlier, now we wouldn't have been able to actually send a get user and send email, the mocked version. But now we can, because we modified it with dependency injection. Now we can actually assert that the send email is called with the following properties. So now we made sure that we can write tests and our code is testable.